Welcome to Liberty Action Alert with Greg Seltz, sponsored by our friends at the Lutheran Center for Religious Liberty here in Washington, D.C. A program that cuts through the chaos and confusion in the culture today by talking to kingdom citizenship, bold biblical principles for a robust public Christian life. And now your host, Dr. Greg Seltz.
Good day, Washington, D.C., and friends of the program all across the country. I'm Greg Seltz. Welcome to Liberty Action Alert. So today we are talking with Lorie Smith again, founder of 303 Creative, a web sign design company. And as I looked over the things that you support biblical marriage. You try to bring your creative skills to serve people with children with disabilities, overseas missions, animals in need. You bring your passion to the needs of these folks, but somehow that's gotten you in trouble. And so we're going to talk about that with Lorie today. Along with Lorie is her legal counsel from ADF, Kellie Fiedorek, who serves as senior counsel and government affairs director for Alliance Defending Freedom. And also we are privileged to have with us Tim Gegline, VP of Government Communications of Focus on the Family. Welcome, everyone, to the Liberty Action Alert.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right, Lorie and Kellie, I'm going to just start with you. First of all, everyone wants to know, how did it go? Supreme Court, it was December 5th, I believe, 2022. You finally got before the Supreme Court. My question is, why did we have to finally go all the way to the Supreme Court for this? Who would have ever thought that believing in marriage suddenly makes you a nefarious actor in America? So first of all, how did the argument go that day? How did we get there?
Well, I'll start there, I guess, and just briefly talk about the fact of how we got there is that Colorado has consistently engaged in a pattern and practice of censorship against its own citizens. And Lorie is a victim of their attempts to try to coerce her speech and force her to say something and celebrate something. It goes against the very core of who she is. And we've seen them do this before. Colorado has gone after Jack Phillips, who I'm sure many of your listeners know, who's the cake artist from Colorado. So Lorie is yet another victim of Colorado officials' failure to respect the freedom of speech. And that freedom belongs to all of us as Americans, regardless of what our beliefs might be. The government is supposed to protect us and allow us to speak consistent with those beliefs. And that's what Lorie's standing for. I know she'll probably share a little bit more about that. But coming out of the court on December 5th was really incredible. I think arguments went very well. We certainly felt like most of the justices felt very uncomfortable with what Colorado is attempting to do and how they're trying to force Lorie to violate the core of who she is, but also the significance of that and what that means, that free speech is for everyone. So regardless of what your beliefs are about marriage or any other topic, government's role is to protect freedom, not coerce it. And we're cautiously optimistic the court will uphold that fundamental freedom later this spring.
Well, Lorie, again, talk to us a little bit about your heart while you got here, because I'm like you. I'm like, you can have different views of marriage, different views of relationships, but the church has always proclaimed, and Christians have always proclaimed, that God made us male and female and we have this beautiful thing called the family. We call it the Trinity of civility: man, woman, child. I mean, nations cannot survive if there aren't healthy families there. So this has just been something that's not really controversial. It challenges all of us to a level of morality. And so it just is crazy that holding that belief now is seen as such a negative, destructive thing. Why did you feel compelled to take a stand on this rather than just to go along to get along?
Well, I've always wanted to design and create for weddings. In my business, I love working with people from all different walks of life. I have clients who identify as LGBT. But it's always been important to me that every project that I consider is glorifying and honoring to our Creator. That's non-negotiable for me. And I want to create for weddings consistent with my view on marriage and the beauty behind marriage, and through artwork and custom graphics and verbiage and telling stories. I want to do that in a creative way that glorifies and honors God.
Right.
So because of that, there are some messages I cannot create. And what the state of Colorado is saying is that it can compel and force artists to create artwork that goes against what they believe in the core of who they are. And that's a violation of everyone's right, not just mine. So I've decided to take a stand. This journey has now been a little over 6.5 years.
Wow.
To stand for everyone's right. Whether your view on marriage is similar to mine or perhaps different, everyone should have the right to create custom graphics and artwork that's consistent with what they believe.
Well, and Kellie, back to you about this. I mean, in 2021, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals ruled against Lorie. But if I understand their argument could actually lead to the point where they can compel any artist to do whatever they wish. And it seemed kind of crazy. It honestly seemed like a crazy ruling. Can you help our listeners understand that, the law may not always be our friend? We've got to actually take a stand on some of these principles.
Well, absolutely. And I think that's why Judge Timkovich, who wrote the dissent in the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals decision, called the decision unprecedented in terms of how it would affect not only Lorie, but all Coloradans in terms of allowing the government to misuse its law to compel speech. And he rightly, pointed out that the government cannot pick and choose which messages are permissible and which ones aren't. That's not the government's role. The government's role is to respect a diversity of beliefs, a diversity of viewpoints, and to allow people to live peacefully in our society. So it was a truly astonishing decision, which I think is ripe for reversal. And as I mentioned earlier, the Supreme Court seemed deeply concerned with the arguments that Colorado was making and the implications of that for artists and for really all Americans who want to speak and create and live consistent with their sincerely held beliefs.
Tim, there are societal ramifications to this, but again, we speak especially about the ramifications to the church and to Christian people because that's who we represent and that's who we advocate for. But it really has societal implications when you can start to see the referees. I call, politicians and judges the referees. Well, when the referees start calling the game by different rules for this team and different rules for that team, I mean, again, how have we gotten to the point where people are not really uncomfortable in our society? I mean, I can tell you right now, there are people who would be comfortable shutting Lorie's business down. They would be. And they don't really understand the implications of that. They don't understand what they're arguing against. They don't understand the deep principles that are being violated here. But hey, if it makes them feel good and it wins for their side, talk about how the culture needs to actually rise up against this as well as the church.
Well, those of us that focus on the family believe very strongly that Lorie Smith is the best of us. She embodies everything we could possibly want, not only in a great citizen, but in a responsible and great business owner. This is why our wonderful friends at Alliance Defending Freedom are doing precisely the right thing, and why we are very hopeful, very optimistic about the outcome of Lorie's case. We believe that she's going to win. The thing that we love about ADF, that Focus on the Family, is they love the Constitution. And the primary author of the Constitution was James Madison. And he famously, he was just a remarkably eloquent writer. And among all the things that he wrote that conscience is the most sacred of all property. I mean, this is a powerful sentence, but it's above all a powerful idea. Conscience is the most sacred of all property. Here we are in the Lorie Smith case. She absolutely embodies and evokes conscience in its purest form. And it is in large measure because we believe her case is so fully, self-evidently constitutional. We believe for those reasons she's going to be victorious.
Well, and Lorie, back to you. I mean, first of all, how are you doing? Because one of the things that I've noticed, we have a Finnish bishop, Bishop Pohjola, and he was talking about, the same kind of thing. Governments now the ones that are rising up against you. And so he just stood there and just said, I'm going to give my witness and hope it blesses people. But he almost felt like he was fighting his nation. How are you doing? Because this is more than just a disagreement between two business people. I mean, this is the government saying, Lorie, you're in our crosshairs.
This has been a long process, and I echo a lot of those feelings and emotions. This journey has not been easy. And I recognize, though, that the stand that I'm taking is not just for myself.
Right.
This right to speak and live consistently with one's faith is important to each and every one of us. I have walked through this journey for about, I think I said 6.5 years. And we still have several more months before it's over, but it's worth it. I'm standing for my right to speak and live consistent with my faith. I'm standing for the rights of others who disagree with me on this topic of marriage, because free speech is guaranteed to each and every one of us, and that's worthy of protecting. And at times I have felt like I'm taking on Goliath, but the Lord has just been incredibly faithful and really shown himself through this whole journey. And I see this as an opportunity to share the gospel with a country that desperately needs to hear the good news.
Yeah, I second that. And you know, the sad part about it too, when I think if you're a business person, you have a product, you want to sell the product, you want to reach out to the neighborhood, you want to market it, all that kind of stuff. You still have to do all of that. Yes. But with the process of the government saying we're going to limit your speech or direct your speech, and I think that's the thing, folks. If you are listening, that is the issue, that the government is compelling what we are to say about issues that are issues of conscience, issues that are morally understood very clearly in the scripture for us. We don't always live up to the moral teachings of the scripture, but the scripture is this foundational book. I love what G.K. Chesterton said about it. He said, I didn't like the church because they seemed to put up barriers everywhere. But when I realized that those barriers are where God wanted it, it was so that freedom could run wild. And so there are things that are good for us when we hear the word no. And so standing for these things and saying these things and trying to share these things, we should be free to do that. Kellie, back to you. When I think about this, we wrote an opinion piece for our people called "Why Does Every Deli Need to Be Kosher?" And it's it just makes so much sense to me. If I walk into a deli and it doesn't have what I want, as long as there's a deli down the street that has it, why do I have to compel this one to do exactly as I please? And why is that not the argument for this? And again, what do you think are the ramifications of the decision, good or bad, that's coming in the spring?
Well, something I think that's important for all of your listeners and all of us to understand and appreciate is that what Lorie does is she does custom work. Her designs are all custom. It's just not a plug and play. And that's the case for many artists across the country. They create custom art. And so the problem at hand here, and we're seeing it not just in Colorado, but in states and cities across the country, is these governments are misusing the law to try to force artists, even sometimes with threat of jail time, to custom design messages that go against the core of who they are. And that violates the freedom of speech. So the implications here are very significant. And if the court were not to reverse the lower court decision of whole free speech, it would harm all of us, regardless of who we are, whether we're the LGBT graphic designer, whether we're pro-abortion or pro-life, whatever our political or religious or other beliefs might be. All of us want to live and speak freely. We all have that bedrock freedom of speech. And that's what we're hoping the court will uphold. And, you know, it's interesting in Lorie's case, the number of people who came out and supported her, whether through amicus briefs or in op-eds or in other articles, even the ones saying, we don't necessarily agree with Lorie's views on everything, but we agree she has the freedom of speech. That's what's unique to the United States of America. That's what we're seeking to preserve. And as Tim mentioned, it's a bedrock principle in the Constitution, and the Supreme Court absolutely should uphold that freedom that belongs to all of us.
Well, and let me take it one step further and see what you think about this. And Lorie or Kellie or Tim, you can jump in on this. I see my biggest beef, even to those who are activists on the Hill who disagree with our view of marriage. We finally said the government is not supposed to be involved in trying to define what healthy relationships are. That's not their role. In fact, when they actually get involved in marriage, the only reason they get involved in marriage is they take the rights away from a man and a woman, make them sign a contract. Why? Because they don't want to raise the children. That's the only relationship that has the potential for a new citizen in it. So we argue if the government can't limit its nefarious activity of limiting rights to a man and a woman, they should get out of the whole marriage business and let us all define it community by community. And that's not the best answer maybe, but for a lot of people on the Hill, they thought, we disagree with your view of marriage, but yeah, we kind of agree with that view of government involvement in our lives. And I guess what I'm saying is when you start thinking about now they're defining what healthy relationships are, isn't that a bit scary if the folks on the Hill are starting to define that for all of us? Anyone want to jump in on that?
Well, I'd be happy to briefly jump in. If anybody on Capitol Hill, with Leviathan power and strength, think that they can make that definition or determination, it's really a complete misadventure for what their constitutionally stated role is. To the first part of your question, the thing that is fascinating about this case, and I think that the reason that most of us believe that ADF and Lorie Smith are going to prevail is because, in addition to the constitutional prerequisite, it just makes sense. This is one of those wonderful cases where our faith and reason are completely in sync. And I think that anybody who looks at this, anybody of really, of goodwill, they will say that the idea here of compelling, of giving the power to the state to compel the conscience of the individual on the basis of free expression is really a misapplication of that constitutional principle. And Kellie, I certainly defer to you on the constitutional questions, but it seems to me that that as we await for the Supreme Court's decision, in May or June, it seems to me that just on constitutional grounds, this case with Lorie seems to be remarkably strong.
Well, it certainly does. And I would also point out that this case, 303 Creative, it does transcend the issue of marriage. Yes, those are Lorie's beliefs, but whatever the court rules in this case is dealing with free speech. The question before them is, can the government compel an artist to speak in violation of what they believe? And so that would apply to any of us. It would apply to the LGBT artist. It would apply to the Democrat artist. It would apply to the Christian artist, regardless of our beliefs. And we all share similar and differing viewpoints. What Lorie's standing for is that bedrock freedom of speech, which ultimately allows us to pursue truth and to discern that and to dialogue about that. It makes society better. It's the bedrock for a lot of other freedoms. Civil liberties do, in fact, travel together. And so whatever happens in this, every single American should care and should want Lorie to win, even if you don't agree with her necessarily or have different views about the subject of marriage.
Right. Well, Lorie, it was a big day, December 5th, and we'll await the ruling. Is there anything, again, we can pray for you about? How do you feel where you're at right now? Because like I said, I can't even imagine. And I've talked to our cake baker friend in Colorado too. He's been in litigation, it seems like forever, and it's finally wearing him down. It's wearing his family down. I just think the process has become the punishment, and I don't think that's right either. But at this point, what can we do? Are people, I know people are praying for you, but just, again, some personal feelings about where you're at.
After the court hearing in December, I had a lot of emotions, and I think I'm still praying and working through a lot of those. And I'm optimistic and looking forward to the decision, hopefully in May or June. So I would just ask your listeners to continue praying, and specifically for the decision, that it would protect as many people as possible. That's right. What I'm praying for. And Lord willing, we will have wonderful news to celebrate. And so I'm just encouraged. I thank your listeners for their support and for their prayers. And I'm also grateful to ADF, who's walked with me hand in hand over the last 6+ years. So God has certainly raised up a community of people to walk this with me, and I'm so grateful for that.
I think one of my favorite memories was sitting in the court with Lorie that day when her case was heard, and when Justice Gorsuch said, "So it's not about the person, it's about the message." That was just such an amazing moment. We both sort of looked at each other and realized we were so thankful that one of the justices truly understood the essence of the case, that Lorie loves everyone and serves everyone. She just can't create every message, every custom message. And that was just a moment I will never forget, of being able to sit together and be part of that of that moment at the nation's highest court. There's just so much at stake, and God has truly gone before Lorie in this case.
Well, and we're thankful for you. We're thankful for ADF that's willing to combat these issues at this litigious level. But, one of the things I tell to our people, to our churches, is we're going to have to start engaging the cultural aspect of this, because upstream from culture is still that notion that if you believe in marriage, or if you believe in some of these moral teachings of the Bible, in a libertine, everything goes culture, those suddenly become, whether they call them hate speech or secular blasphemy laws or any of that kind of stuff. And the reality is these things have blessed this country for so many years, and it's made it the freest country in the whole world. And we've got to start to say, we can't just wait till ADF, fights for us in the legal realm. We've got to start engaging this at the cultural level too. Tim, Focus on the Family does that all the time. I think that's what you're trying to do with your new book that we'll talk about in another program. But isn't that where we're at too? That if the church and its people don't start engaging this culturally upstream, it's pretty tough for Kellie and Lorie to win at the legal level eventually too.
Absolutely. And the temptation is to disengage.
Well, listen, we are waiting. Do we know when the ruling, I know that you can never really say when it's coming down, but is it May, June, that time frame?
We expect it to probably be then. We have to have it by June, but we could get it pretty much any time before then as well. But we're certainly very hopeful for that. And you're so right too. We need Americans to be courageous and courageous in their beliefs, and not allow the government to excise certain viewpoints it doesn't like from the public square. So we are hopeful and so thankful for Americans across the country who are acting with that boldness and with that courage, because courage is contagious.
Yes, it is. And so again, Kellie, can you tell us, give us the ADF website so they can go and learn more about Lorie's case?
Sure. So if you go to adflegal.org, you can learn more about Lorie's case. You can also just do 303 Creative in your search bar, ADF. It'll pull up more on her case, and some really beautiful videos that really show more of Lorie's story and the heart she has for people and for creative design and the people that she's touched. So it's adflegal.org.
And Lorie, we do still want to get you back on the program to talk about your journey of faith, because I remember we talked about that before. But we just wanted to let people know so they could keep praying for this specific action that's going on before the court, because I know you took a stand on this. You didn't just wait for it to come to you. And your courage, you're right. Courage is contagious, and you're kind of walking into the buzzsaw, but hopefully that the buzzsaw doesn't have many teeth. So.
Free speech is worthy of protecting and protecting today, but also for our children and their children and so on. Now is the time to stand.
Well, and I love the fact, like I said, the 10 Commandments, which has formed kind of the moral view. I mean, even the founding fathers, Tim, this, the founding fathers said you can't have a good law that violates them. They call us all to a higher standard, but we should be able to at least converse about these things with our neighbors in love and in mutual respect. And that's what we're all fighting for.
Yes. And free expression is very consistent with the natural law. And I think that unfortunately, in too many cases, it's as an idea placed in the backseat instead of in the driver's seat. And the Lorie Smith case, I think, is really going to help define going forward any number of other cases to come after it. And that's why this case is so important.
Well, this is why the First Amendment's the First Amendment, and it's not just freedom of speech, it's also freedom of religion and freedom to exercise that. And so we are with you, Lorie, and we're with you, Kellie. We can't wait to hear how it all comes to fruition. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in today. To get to know our LCRL-DC work better, check out our website at lcrlfreedom.org. Contained there are resources to empower your public square dynamic discipleship. Or check out our weekly Word from the Center opinion piece every Friday at facebook.com/LCRL Freedom. Till next time, God bless you always. I'm Greg Seltz. Have a great week.
You've been listening to Liberty Action Alert with Greg Seltz. Executive Director of the Lutheran Center for Religious Liberty in Washington, D.C. This program has been brought to you by the Lutheran Center for Religious Liberty.